Okay, I want to first start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Racha, Kodash, Rakatham. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and salutations to the Akim and to Salaki, to the Akim around the four corners of the earth, pushing the truth with faith and sincerity. Once again, this is the fellow servant Yahweh Sop from the GMS Cleveland camp, coming back at you with another lesson out of the MacArthur's. I'm gonna show a picture of the book. It's the MacArthur's New Testament commentary, Matthews 1 and 7. I never went into this when I first started reading. I guess it was produced by the Moody Bible Institute of Chicago. And like I said, last week we stopped at chapter 3. It's talking about fools and wise men. So I'm just going to jump right into it. I believe we left off at subtitle Bethlehem of Judea. As it still is today, Bethlehem was still, Salakit was then a small town 5 or 6 miles south of Jerusalem in the fertile hill country of Judea, or Judah. It is cradled between two ridges and was located along the main ancient highway from Jerusalem to Egypt. It was once called Ephrath, or Ephrathia, and is referred to by the name several times in the Old Testament. They got precepts 35 and 16, Ruth 4 and 11, and Psalms 132 and 6. They also list Micah 5 and 2. The town came to be called Bethlehem after the conquest of Canaan under Joshua, its new name meaning house of bread. It was at Bethlehem that Jacob buried Rachel. Genesis 35 and 19, the traditional site of whose tomb is still shown to tourists today. Oh yeah, I did read all this because remember I said that you had, 2/3 that, believe that the Bible is fake. But like I said, from this is stating that they still got the tomb. It was also here that Ruth met and married Boaz, Ruth 1 and 22, and then Ruth 2 and 4, and that their illustrious grandson David grew up and tended sheep. 1 Samuel 17, verses 12 and 15. By the time of Yahushua birth, it had long been called the city of David. Luke 2, verses 4 and 11. The prophet Micah specifically promised that the Messiah would come from this small village, which is Micah 5 and 2. Herod the king. This Herod, known as the greatest, the first of several Herods mentioned in the New Testament. Julius Caesar had appointed his father Antipater to be procurator or governor of Judea under the Roman occupation. Antipater then managed to have his son Herod appointed prefect of Galilee. In that office, Herod was successful in quelling the Jewish guerrilla bands who continued to fight against their foreign rulers. And I guess that's where you get the Sicarii and all that. Not for sure, but I forgot who went into that. They were saying, I think it was Apostle Ramlab. He went into, the different sects. But I know the Sicarii was still fighting. After fleeing to Egypt when the Parthians invaded Palestine, Herod then went to Rome and in 40 BC was declared by Octavian and Antony with the concurrence of the Roman Senate to be the king of the Jews. He invaded Palestine the next year and after several years of fighting drove out the Parthians and established his kingdom. Because he was not a Jewish but Idumean or Edomite. See, that's like I said, once again, that's why I grabbed the book and wanted to read out of it because it do give some history. Like I said, it's off on some things, but like I said, you gotta know how to, spit off the bone, Herod married Maramini. I'm not pronouncing her name right. I know I'm not. Marimane. It's spelled Mariamne. I know she was actually an Israelite, though. Heirs to the Jewish Hasmonean house. So she came from the house of the Maccabees. In order to make himself more acceptable to the Jews, he now ruled. And I know, just as a further tidbit, that he was so much of a fucking devil that he also, I think he killed her, and then he killed some of his sons. So, that's the Edomite for you, just like back in slavery days where they had take the son they had with a Israelite woman and take the boy and put him, tie him to a rope and put him in the water and wait as alligator bait, basically. He was a clever and capable warrior, orator, and diplomat. In times of severe economic hardship, he gave back some tax money collected from the people. During the Great Famine of 25 BC, he melted down various gold objects in the palace to buy food for the poor. He built theaters, racetracks, and other structures to provide entertainment for the people. In 19 BC, he began the reconstruction of the temple in Jerusalem. He revived Samaria and built the beautiful port city of Caesarea in honor of his benefactor, Caesar Augustus, Octavian's title. He embellished the cities of Beirut, Damascus, Tyre, Sidon, and Rhodes, and even made contributions to rebuilding work in Athens. He built the remarkable and almost impregnable fortress of Masada, where in 73 AD nearly 1,000 Jewish defenders committed suicide rather than be captured by the Roman general Flavius Silva. But Hero was also cruel and merciless. He was incredibly jealous, suspicious, and afraid for his position and power. Fearing his potential threat, he had the high priest Aristobulus, who was his wife's Marine's brother, drowned, after which he provided a magnificent funeral where he pretended to weep. He then had that's the spirit. Then he had Mariamene herself killed, and then her mother and two of his own sons. 5 days before his death, about a year after Yahushua was born, he had a third son executed. One of the greatest evidences of his bloodthirstiness and insane cruelty was having the most distinguished citizens of Jerusalem arrested and imprisoned shortly before his death. Because he knew no one would mourn his own death, he gave orders for those prisoners to be executed the moment he died, in order to guarantee that there would be mourning in Jerusalem. Do you hear this shit? Now, if that ain't a fucking devil, when you really go into history and look at some of these motherfucking devils, like Vlad the Impaler and shit like that, like that's supposed to be related to like the fucking, that demon fucking in England, the Windsor, that Windsor bitch. You know what I'm saying? Like, these motherfuckers is bloodthirsty, ruthless. You know what I'm saying? Like, real shit. That barbaric act was executed, Salakia. That barbaric act was exceeded in cruelty only by his slaughter of all the male children who were in Bethlehem and in all its environs from 2 years old and under. And the precept is Matthew 2:16, in hopes of killing any threat to his throne from the one the Magi said had been born king of the Jews. And that's when, I believe that's the Herod. Well, they just broke it down that was the Herod that was trying to seek to kill Yahushua as an infant, as a baby, when he was helpless. And I believe that's the Herod that's supposed to die where his, his intestines. I know he had died a horrible death. And I don't know where the actual precept is. If you brothers know where it's at, check into it. But I don't know if it's in the Apocrypha or where exactly it is, but they say he's supposed to die, a pretty bad death. I know he's supposed to, like, something with his intestines or, his bowels or something. Magi from the East, that's the subtitle. Few biblical stories are as well known, yet so clouded by myth and tradition as that of the Magi, or wise men mentioned by Matthew. During the Middle Ages, legend developed that they were Salakia, they were kings, that they were 3 in number, and that their names were Casper, Balthazar, and Melchior. Now, that might be bullshit, because I believe the possible, Esau he's good at deception. So, you know what I'm saying? And he ties and puts a lot of myth, like Apostle Ramlan went into, like how he was talking about, Hollywood, and how they said that they came up with the name of Hollywood because, it was a Moabite and he was hauling wood up the hill, and then he kept on saying, Hollywood. He said, what you doing? He said, Hollywood. but basically meaning hauling wood. And they get off on little shit like that. When you read the scripture, it doesn't go into how many actual men it was. It just says wise men. It doesn't say 3 wise men. So, because they were thought to represent the 3 sons of Noah, one of them is often pictured as an Ethiopian. A 12th century bishop of Cologne even claimed to have found their skulls. The only legitimate facts we know about these particular magi are the few given by Matthew in the first 12 verses of chapter 2. We are not told their number. Okay, that's a spirit. We're not told their number, their names, their means of transportation to Palestine, or the specific country or countries from which they came. The fact that they came from the east would have been assumed by most people in New Testament times, because the Magi were primarily known as the priestly political class of the Parthians, who lived to the east of Palestine. The Magi first appeared in history in the 7th century BC as a tribe within the Median nation in eastern Mesopotamia. Slovakia. Many historians consider them to have been some Semites, which, if so, made them with the Jews and Arabs, descendants of Noah's son Shem. It may also be like Abraham. The Magi came from ancient Ur and Chaldea. The name Magi soon came to be associated solely with the hereditary priesthood within that tribe. The Magi became skilled in astronomy and astrology, which in that day were closely associated. A sacrificial system that somewhat resembled the one God gave to Israel through Moses. They were involved in various occult practices, including sorcery, and were especially noted for their ability to interpret dreams. It is from their name that our words magic and magician are derived. A principal element of magician worship was fire, and on their primary altar burned a perpetual flame. I'm sure Esau get that. I mean, because like I say, Esau fuck with the myths, and like when you go into the Olympics, they had that flame burning, for the whole games, for the whole duration of the games. But maybe that's a topic for another day. Make sure I try and remember that though. Slovakia though, which they claimed descended from heaven. The Magi were monotheistic, believing in the existence of only one God or power. Because of their monotheism, it was easy for the Magi to adapt to the teachings of the 6th century BC Persian religious leader named Zoroaster, who believed in a single God, Ahura Mazda, and a cosmic struggle between good and evil. Darius the Great established Zoroastrianism as the state religion of Persia. Because of their combined knowledge of science, agriculture, mathematics, history, and the occult, their religious and political influence continued to grow until they became the most prominent and powerful group of advisors in the medieval Persian and subsequently the Babylonian Empire. It is not strange, therefore, that they often were referred to as wise men. It may be that the law of the Medes and Persians, see Daniel 6 and 8, 12 and 15, or chapter 6, verse 8, verse 12, and verse 15, and Esther, chapter 1, verse 19, was found on the teachings of these Magi. Historians tell us that no Persian was ever able to become king without mastering the scientific and religious disciplines of the Magi and then being approved and crowned by them, and that this group also largely controlled judicial appointments. Esther 1 and 13, Nergal-Sar Ezer, the Rab-Mag, chief of the Babylonian Magi, was with Nebuchadnezzar when he attacked and conquered Judah. Jeremiah 39 and 3. We learn from the book of Daniel that the Magi were among the highest ranking officials of Babylon, because the Lord gave Daniel the interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, which none of the other court seers were able to do. Daniel was appointed as ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. Daniel's 2 and 48. Because of his great wisdom and because he had successfully pleaded for the lives of the wise men who had failed to interpret the king's dream. Daniel 2 and 24. Daniel came to be highly regarded among the Magi. The plot against Daniel that caused him to be thrown into the lion's den It was fomented by the jealous satraps and other commissioners, not the Magi. Daniel 6, 4 through 9. I'm going to stop there.